Good morning and welcome to Sunday Forum. Those of you here and also those of you who are watching from home. How is this? Okay, I guess I'm just not close enough to it. We have a wonderful morning for us today. We're getting to hear from all three of our ministerial team, which doesn't happen very often because they're so busy in so many places. I'm not going to do any introductions. You know them. Just one housekeeping note. They're going to encourage questions and discussion. Please just wait until you have a microphone before you ask your question so that those of us at home can hear the questions as well. And without further ado, I'm going to introduce our ministers. DeWayne, may I start with you? Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you all for being here. So I just want to give you just very quickly the chart that you see here is different from when I got here. And one of the things that we did as clergy in a retreat, a clergy retreat together, just the three of us, we began to talk about especially what we had been doing, what we do, what we are passionate about, what our ministry vocational call is as we have understood it. And that whole discussion created this. And you began to, some of it's just to make sure that we were aligning with our gifts and also doing what we were passionate about, knowing that some parts of it would be things that we did not choose, but it would be a way to really do the shared ministry that we want. And you'll notice at the top, it starts with shared ministry. We talk and plan and think about preaching together. We are in communication about pastoral care, and we support each other depending on who's taking the lead on a pastoral care visit. We are very engaged regularly in program development and congregational vision. We spend a lot of time talking to the deacons and the Leadership Council about congregational vision, program development. That's how we not only provide the programming that you see, but also how do we know where to deploy resources and to do more planning. Clergy meets twice a week in extended conversation about the range of things that happen. That is intentional time every week, twice a week. To make sure that we are doing that work. And then worship, leadership, and development, all of the things that you see in these worship services, special worship services, different parts to it, people we invite, that all happens with clergy discussion and planning together. In my particular portfolio, you will see that we also, all three of us, liaison with a particular board. In this case, we all equally get two boards that we work very closely with and that we sit in on in meetings and planning with. And so I have Board of Finance and Administration and Board of Worship. So that means that I'm also, my primary focus in my portfolio is finance, planning, stewardship, development, budget. And then operations. I work very closely and supervise our directive operations. And so I spend a lot of time working on operations of the church. I work with the marketing team and the communications manager. I also am sort of the ambassador to the world at large. I am in conversation with government, business as lead minister of Plymouth Church. I am the Plymouth Church booster. It doesn't, no matter where I'm sitting, I am forecasting, talking about our programming, talking about our staff, talking about our clergy, connecting people with, and just yesterday we were at Open Streets Minneapolis on West Broadway and North, and every stop, every person we talked to, they either knew that I was lead minister of Plymouth Church or they heard about Plymouth Church. And this morning, there is a QR code that you go, Resma Manakan, who did my grandmother's hands, has a children's book. And I wanted to make sure, and he saw me beeline, wanted to make sure that Plymouth knew about the children's book. So that's what that role that I do. I'm also head of staff, which means looking at personnel and staff policies, working with the Human Resources Committee with Ann. I'm also work with Board of Worship. So the worship that you see, planning it, thinking about it, forecasting it. Wednesday, we'll be talking with the Board of Worship about Christmas worship, and about the Advent thing. So that's what I do. Beth?
Thanks, DeWayne. Good morning. I'm Beth Hoffman Faith, and I'm the Minister for Congregational Life. Some of you may remember that before we made this transition, my title was Minister for Congregational Care and Worship. It was a mouthful. But as we made the shift in portfolios, as we talked with one another about where our calling really fell, how we might want to realign our duties, I continue to administrate the pastoral care. So like DeWayne said, we all share in pastoral care to the congregation, but oftentimes I'm the one that's notified of someone who's in need of care, and then we discuss who has the relationship and where does that fall. And so that's why it says pastoral care administrator in my column there. One of the biggest shifts in this portfolio is that the spiritual formation, which used to belong to Seth, now falls under my umbrella. And we have two outstanding full-time staff people for spiritual formation program, Nina Johnson, who's our Director of Children, Youth, and Families, and Madeline Siebertson, who's our Director of Spiritual Formation. They really hold the bulk of the work for spiritual formation. I am available as resource and support to continue to help them vision ahead, as we have already begun, and now we'll start to implement kind of our overarching vision for spiritual formation within Plymouth Church. But you'll see in the bottom columns that are headlined in red who we each supervise. This may or may not be known to you that each of us have several people on staff where we provide direct supervision. And so I supervise both Madeline and Nina, along with Doug Freeman, who is the ministry assistant to all of us and to the clergy. And the reason that I am his supervisor is because Doug really assists me a lot. He's my right-hand person in terms of figuring out correspondence. He does a lot of database work, which is important for me to sort of keep tabs on people. He helps with bereavement letters and birthday cards, things that are important ways of pastoral care. A couple of other things to highlight on my column is that until we made these sort of divisions and portfolios, there was not a clergy or even a staff person who oversaw small group development. And I've always been I've always felt that small groups are really important to the life of the church, particularly a church the size of Plymouth. During the pandemic, it became very clear to me that we needed to loosen our focus on how many people are in the sanctuary, large group gatherings. Those have really shifted in our culture since the pandemic. There's still a bit of a fear of gathering with a lot of people. People are now really accustomed to watching services online. We have a really fairly large online community, people who tune in every week to our worship services, who for one reason or the other are not yet coming back to church. But for me, I really believe that my goal is that every person at Plymouth would have a point of connection within Plymouth beyond worship. So for some, that is board leadership committee involvement. For a lot of others, it's the fellowship group, a small group through one more chair, the women's breakfast, the men's book study. It's also in the small group offerings that we have around spiritual formation, and I'll talk a little bit more about those in a minute. But there are so many ways to feel connected and a part of community at Plymouth. And I'm delighted that in my portfolio, I get to help bring some of those opportunities to life and continue to workshop and develop more and more. The last thing that I'll just lift up is that some of you may see that Discernment and Covenant Committee and wonder what that is. That is a small group of people who form that committee under the umbrella of the deacons that I am the liaison to. And we work with our covenant partners in ministry and all of our Plymouth members who are in some point of their discernment process towards ordination. And I will remind you that we have 4 covenant partners. That means we have 4 people ordained that are serving in other settings. We saw Tara Bauer here this summer, who is a chaplain in the military. Carl Jones, who many of you know, is active in the church, serves as a chaplain. We have Jenny Eagleman, who also serves as a chaplain, and Catherine Duncan, who just released a book, and we hosted a book event for her. She is an ordained minister who does sort of individual spiritual direction practice. All of those 4 have, we are their shepherding and sponsoring church, and it's important for us to know who they are. We also have many people who are going through the process, who are either in seminary now, out of seminary, and yet waiting to be ordained. And this committee works with them, provides them support and resources, and does some of the things that we need to do as a church to make sure they're getting to the next step. Chris Bonhoff is a really good example. We miss him on staff greatly. He is in seminary and he is doing an internship this year, but he is still under our care, and we're really glad of that. Christine Ford is also under our care, and she is already serving as a minister in a Methodist church, but has not yet been ordained and wants to be ordained here at Plymouth. And we have others too, so we shepherd them along. I'll say one more thing about the way these things are divisions. I hope all of you are aware of the purposes of the church. I love our purposes. I refer to them a lot. And when I'm working with boards and committees, we often talk about them. You'll remember that they're divided into 3 sections. Do you remember what they are? Within, among, beyond. As we were building this portfolio, it occurred to me that we really have a minister, a clergy person for each section. I really feel like I'm the minister for within, and Seth in his role is the minister for among, and DeWayne is the minister for beyond. Now we all do a lot of all of the purposes, but if we think about it that way, it might help you to remember kind of what we're responsible for in our roles.
Thank you. And hello, everyone. I'm really glad we're doing this today because after being on sabbatical, I get to remember what I do here, because apparently I'm not allowed to be paid just to sit in a hammock and read anymore. But I'm grateful for the gift. One thing to note, maybe DeWayne said this, but it's worth naming. All 3 of us report to the deacons as our supervisory body. So if you want to talk about us to somebody, go to the deacons, and they will hear your praise and complaints as necessary. I am the Minister for Justice and the Arts, and a lot of this reconfiguring came about, I think, at my request, my urging. My previous role, I felt it was unachievably sprawling. Over the many years, things had just sort of been put together without a lot of thought of cohesion, and it became too wide for me I didn't feel like I could do it alone. So a lot of this came from me saying, how do I find some cohesion in the work that I'm doing? And this is the result, and I'm very excited about this. So as Minister for Justice in the Arts, my role is that I focus a lot on our justice work and the arts, and I would say, I think especially how those two things play with each other, how justice and arts work build on each other, how one can feed and support the other, and reciprocally so. I work with our board of outreach, and if the word outreach feels doesn't make any sense, or you don't make meaning out of that, another way to think of the board of outreach might be more of the board of justice, and that is really the direction that they're moving. They, under the board of outreach, are most of our justice ministries, our immigrant welcoming working group, our climate and environmental justice group, and our presence team, which is focused on how do we all show up at things? How do we put our bodies and our personhood in presence in advocacy for justice things? I also work with our racial justice initiative that is not part of the board of outreach. It sits in leadership council like a board, even though it is not a board. So those are the justice groups that I work with. I also work with the Board of Fine Arts and all of our arts partnerships in the church, except for choral music, for all the obvious reasons why. Even more so if you ever stand next to me while we're singing a hymn, you'll know why I would never even attempt to go in that direction. And the Board of Fine Arts is in a wonderful place of exploring what is the spiritual foundation and dimension of doing art, receiving art, presenting art together. What is that? And so they're even talking about, is the word fine really what they do? Is it fine arts or is it arts? And how does the word fine maybe separate off things that shouldn't be separated off? A well-used example of that some years ago was that the Board of Fine Arts at one point told the needlers that the embroideries were not fine arts, they were craft. And so they were not part of the Board of Fine Arts work. They are now, and we are the ones who oversee all of the care and moving of the embroideries. I'm also the artistic director of Theater 45 Degrees, which in many ways is the production arm of anything that we do at Plymouth. And right now it's mostly staged readings. So theater in its most specific way. But in future, we're talking about how it can present other types of art, not from the inside of Plymouth, but how are we the production organization to help outside groups do their work here. It says digital ministry on there, which was true up to 4 months ago, but that was really Chris Bonhoff. And he and I worked closely together on that. But when he left, we have not filled that position. So digital ministry is a question mark at this moment. It was video production, the way that he did a podcast called the Meaning Podcast every month and then would lead discussions on it. He did a lot of video production for groups. So next 2 Sundays, or whenever Leadership Sunday is, you'll see some videos at the Board of Outreach table that Chris did about Habitat and the drop-in program. And so that was his role, is how do we use the rest of media besides standing here and talking to be Plymouth together. I supervise currently one person. Chris, our digital ministry specialist, has left, and Hannah Campbell Gustafson, our former outreach coordinator, has taken a job with Mental Health Connect and is also not here. And both of those positions are sort of pending based on the direction that our spiritual practices of our finances lead us. Will we fill those or will we not? So currently I do supervise and meet weekly with Cody Bordeaux, our AV production manager. And anybody watching from home camera, that's because of Cody and his team. All of this and everything in the sanctuary, and anytime we have a public event in which we need amplification, video, any of that, Cody and his team. And his team are Alex, who is up there right now, and Slats and Felix and that they are an incredible team of people. So that is who we are and what we do. Are we? Okay.
I'm gonna quickly, so we can get to one of the things we wanted to talk about. Usually when we have these conversations, we tell you what we are working on and what we're excited about, just to give you a sort of a window into each of our sort of how we are doing the sort of communal praxis of our ministry. And I just wanted to point out to you, one of the things that I'm excited about, you've seen it largely, especially around the budget. You've been seeing the deacons do conversations about our budget and about our finances. And believe it or not, I am excited about that conversation. And I'm excited about because we don't do enough of talking about finances or our giving as a spiritual practice, as a part of our discipleship. And the deacons have been engaging in this wonderful conversation about our values, about what's important to us, about how we feel about money. And that's a little bit unusual for Plymouth. And I think people are kind of trying to figure out and a little bit uncomfortable. Well, I love that discomfort because we need to follow our discomfort to get to an understanding. And we are learning so much. But it also, one reason I like that too, is because if you may, I don't know if you know, the campus, we impaneled Campus Task Force last year, and they came out a little report. And that report, and if you haven't, go to the website, it's available, you can look at it. But that report is a different kind of report that Plymouth is used to. It doesn't spell out all of these sort of like practical things to do. It actually seemed to suggest for us to talk more. And I know people that doesn't like, that seems like we're not doing anything, but what I'm excited about is because we get to discern. Part of this is from the sermon I preached last week. We are really in an unsettled, uncertain time about church life. And this gives us an opportunity to think about that in a real fundamental way, about what it means to be church in a time of a post-pandemic time, a time of social media, about a time of real change, a time of rejection of church. And so that Campus Task Force discernment study gives an opportunity to talk about how Plymouth can live into that kind of an environment. Instead of us sort of, seeing our numbers dwindle. Here's the thing. I'm also excited about our marketing team. I'm one of those ones who's always been worried about saying marketing in church. Trust me, I'm very uncomfortable with that. However, the Plymouth story is getting out there, and many people are showing up that there are many reasons they show up, but it's not what we think or what it used to be the story. There are many reasons they want. And one of it is community. And there's something about Plymouth that people can see themselves in some part of the community. And that's testament to both the way we are trying to think more broadly about who we are as a church, but also marketing people, telling them, if you are interested, if you're just here for your children, we got you covered. If you want to do yoga, we got you covered. If you like music, we got you covered. If you like art, we got you covered. And we're telling the story, and people are intersecting that way. So I'm excited about those things. All this conversation about what it means to be church at a time that people are leaving it, but also really telling the story about what we're passionate about, so that people could say, wow, I think I want to know more about that. Beth. We'll make sure we get to the class.
Yes, trying to give you as much time for questions as possible. Before I highlight my two things that I'm quite excited about, I want to just remind you, if you don't, and maybe you don't know this, but anytime a minister it comes to Plymouth, it is by the vote of the congregation. I'm sure many of you have been at those call meetings and at the vote of the congregation. And those are both terrifying for those who are being called and exhilarating at the same time. But we'll let you know that when we're called to Plymouth, we are called as minister. There's no title attached because there is an awareness that needs change, and that our roles sometimes need that fluidity, which is why we were able to realign our portfolios and make some changes within them. And that's a real gift, to be able to respond to what is the need of the congregation and make shifts within our clergy team is really important. So I want to lift up two things that I'm particularly pleased about. One is that Plymouth has just become a collaborating congregation with Mental Health Connect. Mental Health Connect is a ministry that is housed and sort of bloomed through Bethlehem Lutheran Church in Minneapolis. And it is a consortium of faith communities who support this ministry to make sure that people in our churches and communities are equipped with the resources they need to find mental health help. And so they are, yes, a resource and referral. I have a few brochures, and what's more important is the little business card. And there is a number that one can call or text or an email address if you are advocating for someone or need something yourself, whether that's recommendations for a therapist, programs, recovery groups, any kind of thing. You can contact Mental Health Connect, and a navigator, a real live person who is trained, will stay with you, even if it takes 80 phone calls to make sure that you have the resources that you need. I am so thrilled that we're finally doing this. It is a financial obligation for Plymouth, but it's so worth it. I'm delighted that Trish O'Brien is one of our ambassadors. I am looking for one or two more. Here's Trish right here, and she can answer more questions about Mental Health Connect. If this is a ministry, because this falls under my portfolio, mental health ministry, it's something that is really, really important to me. If this is something that you'd like to get involved in, I welcome you to talk to me about it. I'd love to have a few more people on this kind of ambassador team. You'll be hearing more about Mental Health Connect as we move forward. The other thing I'm just so pleased about, it's been wonderful to watch Madeline Sievertson, our Director of Spiritual Formation, vest herself in getting to know people and start dreaming and visioning and finally implementing pieces of spiritual formation from what she's heard. So if you have not yet seen our fall catalog, this is on the website, but if you are a person who likes paper copies, they're really quite beautiful. There's a stack over there on the table. This fall catalog will outline the spiritual formation classes, small groups that are happening this fall, as well as our Wednesday evening program for youth and adults and our midweek mingle. It highlights programs for our children and youth, special events that are coming up in the year, as it does for Sunday Forum. It also highlights One More Chair and the various groups that are available through One More Chair. And if you aren't sure what One More Chair is, it is a consortium of small groups, and people can join at any time. And there's lots more to say about One More Chair. So if you have questions, please ask me. But please take a look and see what speaks to you. How might you want to get involved? What's making your heart sing as you continue to explore what it means to be a spiritual being in community? Seth.
Thank you. Somebody once described me as a puppy, that I was excited about everything, and that might be kind of true. I get excited about mundane, wonderful things. Two things to highlight. One is the community meal that we do every third Sunday. That is part of my portfolio, and we're doing it today, and I'm very excited to be there tonight for that. The other thing is October 2nd, Monday, October 2nd, in the sanctuary is a staged reading of a play called Bach at Leipzig. It is hilarious. And it is based on a real life situation in 17th century Germany, which I'm sure you're already familiar with. And it features a live organ. So even if you are not interested in the play, come and support Philip Brunel, because he might be a little nervous playing the organ in public. So come and help him feel comfortable about this. That's what I have to be excited about. So we are moving on to a time of questions. And during the pandemic, we had an online time called Open Door, because we were receiving messages from people that there was a perception that our doors were closed, that we were not available for questions or conversation. Now that is wrong. We are very available. Our doors are open. Please come talk to us. This is not the only forum, literally, that you can talk to us and ask questions. And here's a chance to ask really anything. There are no limits. So ask about the past, the present, the future. Ask about the big, the small. What do you want to know about us, about this? I didn't mean you two.
And I have a mic.
Tom, your hand was up slightly faster.
Mic.
Than, yeah, please.
Is this on?
Yes.
Okay.
So for the first 30 years that I was here, I kept hearing rumors that we are not a very welcoming congregation. In the last couple of years, I think we've figured some of that out. And it feels like that has moved from an opportunity to a win. I'm wondering what opportunities and what recent wins you see for our congregation, either at a global level or at a very personal level, like welcoming. And shame all that is appropriate, like you told me.
No shame. I have to say that I am so pleased that we have ambassadors. Oh, sure. The question was, for 30 years that Tom has been attending, he's heard that we aren't a very welcoming church. And suddenly now we seem to have shifted and changed a corner. And why might that be? And what other opportunities are there for us to be more welcoming? Is that?
Well, or just not necessarily welcoming, but what other things could we do better at?
What other things could the congregation do better at? Oh, boy, how much time do we have? No, I'm just kidding. What I do want to highlight is I think that our ambassadors program has really, really helped us make a shift in terms of kind of first impressions upon entry. The ambassadors along with the welcome table. Some of you may remember we used to have the welcome table in Guild Hall, then we had it in the hallway and nobody ever could see it. And we have some really beautiful information. Now it is right when people walk in, door number one. There's always so many friendly people who are ready to usher folks who are new to the community to the welcome table to find out more. And then we have these wonderful ambassadors, that Karen is sitting right there in her red vest, who are really mindful and looking out. And what happens, I think, is what I've experienced in this is that our ambassadors are great about making connections. So suddenly they're bringing new people to some of you to say hello and to foster communication. They bring them to clergy so we can meet them too, because we're often bustling around on Sunday mornings and we don't get to meet all the people who are new. So I think that is something we are doing really well. And I know that there is a need for more ambassadors. So what could we all do? Some of you might volunteer to do something like this on a Sunday morning where you are a greeter, a welcomer, an ambassador.
Yeah. And I just want to add, though, use what we can do. Don't assume that you are so hospitable and nice. I think that's when I got here. There was a lot of conversation about it. And what that sparked was more intentional work in doing it. So my point is, let's never get to the point that we say, we are just so welcoming. Yeah, because once you do that, then you don't feel the need to think about it. And so I think what has happened since I've been here is that we've talked about it a lot. We've talked about what it means to be welcoming. The marketing committee took on this ambassador program because when they went out to talk to people, that was one of the things that people said, like, people don't think we're friendly or we're not welcoming. So if there's anything sort of we could do, is just always keep it uppermost in your mind that we need to, on a Sunday morning, show hospitality. And you can do that personally, or you certainly can, like, do it more formally as an ambassador, but in your capacity, your family here this morning, just that's your intention. I'm going to welcome or say hello to someone I don't know, or ask someone, how can I help you?
My answer to your question is use the library more. It's an incredible resource.
Well, I have a comment and a question. My comment is I've been a member here for less than a year and I really feel welcome. So Tom, one of the first things that happened to me is I started visiting here because I only knew one person, Dave Aston. I've known Dave for years and years and years, but I didn't know anybody else here, period. And in that less than a year, I really feel welcome. So you're doing something, okay? So that's my comment. My question is, after this amazing message Beth just gave us at 9 o'clock, and if you're going to the 11, don't miss it. What do you three clergy feel is easy for you to be a clergy at this church? And what do you feel is difficult?
The easy part, and that's sort of a clue to my sermon today, the easy part for me is it is all about relationship, and you are beautiful people. The easiest thing for me to be is with you, among you, walking with you on your life journey, tending you when you are hurt, and hearing your joys and concerns. It is the most magnificent blessing, and it is so very easy. The hardest thing for me personally is there is so much to do and not enough time. And sometimes our capacity, and I think I can speak for my colleagues here, it feels very overwhelming and it's a lot. And so, and then things get kind of truncated, like time away, necessary time off, Sabbath. Those become harder to practice. So.
Do you have an answer? Yeah, I do. My answer is the same for both sides of the question. Our history. It is a gift to be in a place that has the depth of history and 167 years and all that has been built for us. This foundation that we're able to stand on is superb and amazing and exceptional. And sometimes we drown in our own history.
The easiest thing is that Plymouth really does embrace my ministry. I don't have to justify what, even people who don't necessarily agree with me, they are so generous and open to that ministry and they support it. It feels really wonderful to know that I can pursue, I can be prophetic, I can be pastoral, I can inhabit all of those identities of a ministry, prophetic, pastoral, and know that you all both support it and somewhat expect it. And that's really, really important because I don't have to sort of justify my ministry in that way. Other places that I've served, some people want you to be this way, they want you to be that way. You all hold that tension, even if if it's not what you want from me. But they also have to have colleagues. They can pull up the slack on one area and we can do that and support each other. The most difficult thing to me, and I will speak very honestly, the most difficult thing about being at Plymouth is feeling sometimes like an other. I am a Black queer man in this place. And no fault of your own, that's just the dynamic. And yet I have to be whole in that space. You have to make sure that you have the ability to recognize what is missing and figure out how to include that in your life so that when I come to you with every bit as much passion and wholeness that you deserve from me. So I don't ever want to show up to this place remiss in anything a part of my life. So if you see on Facebook and social media what I'm doing, there are pieces of my life that I'm trying to make a fullness and joy and expression so that when I come to you, you get all of the good stuff. and none of the ugly stuff.
Thank you, Seth. This is for you. In the areas of justice that you referred to there, have we now or in the past reached out specifically to the tent cities, which are such obvious locations of poverty in our area, and there are more and more there. They're not going away. I know we favor more housing, we favor more assistance, but do we actually go out and do a ministry at the tent cities, and should we? Secondly, same question with respect to a prison ministry. Have we in the past, or can we now, or do we in the future reach out and try to engage in some affirmative ministry into prisoners in the state of Minnesota?
Great questions. And something I was remiss to say, we have a new housing justice group that is starting right now. That'll be part of the Board of Outreach. In terms of specifically the encampments, we do not in broadly intentional church-based way do it. People have gone on behalf of the church. We were just, you saw the exchange between the two of us when you were talking, is we were just reached out to by the Aliveness Project, asking us to participate with them as they go out. And so if anybody would like to help me figure out how we can make 50 meals once a week or once a month or whatever that might be, that would be 50 sandwiches. That would be really worthwhile. And the problem is they deliver it Wednesday mornings, and our best time typically for making these things as a community is Wednesday evenings. And so the timing is not right. So if you have any ideas how we can do so for a Wednesday morning, I'd love to talk to you. And the other thing is, no, not directly with prisons. I did my clinical pastoral education in the Stillwater prison, but that was many years ago. And that is, if somebody would like to help begin that, please talk to me. We can start that together.
Well, I want to thank the three of you. You are amazing. Just do amazing ministry here. So thank you for that. And then I really don't have a question. And some of you have already heard me say this. We had a Bible study on Thursday, led by Beth. The topic was Eve. How many of you were there? All women. No men. The next one is Esther. The importance is that these stories aren't just about the women. They're about the men and the relationship between men and women and what that has meant through the history of our church. It wasn't just that priests were all men because somebody thought of that. Eve, the story of Eve, which isn't history, had an impact on that. The oppression of women has come from those stories. So I invite all the men to come and to be part of the conversation. I assume you weren't just going to avoid Beth's one on women. DeWayne and Seth are going to be doing them also. Were you guys not going to come to those either? So please come and enrich the conversation. You have something to learn from us, and we have something to learn from you as well.
I have a question. A friend of ours asked Mary and I a week or so ago, where he said that Plymouth is a very unique church, special church. And you kind of answered that elliptically today by a number of ways, but why are we a unique church? And why are we different than Westminster or Central Lutheran, whatever? If you think in those terms.
What is her relationship with the food shelves?
And I'm glad I was just sitting with the downtown. We have a monthly breakfast with the downtown clergy, and I was really giving Tim Hart Anderson some. I make fun of him a lot about Westminster. But I'll answer it from someone who I think has. I'm probably one of the newest people here, certainly the newest clergy, and sort of coming in. I think what makes Plymouth unique in my estimation is that and I think it has something to do with congregationalism too. I mean, we are the size and history of those other downtown churches. And even though we talk about, we have a conversation about our tradition and what tradition does, I think we are just a freer place than some of those. I know that may not seem, but I think we are freer, we move quicker. And to me, that makes us unique in terms of what people would expect from us. We are not so hampered by tradition and process that we can't figure out. And I love being in a place like that. One of the reasons I did not become an Episcopal priest is because I said, I don't know if I can have a bishop looking over my shoulder. I want to move. I want to. And so I think what makes us unique is, given our history, our age, and how long we've been here and who our peers are, we are far more nimble, far more engaged, far more open. They may argue with that, but that's the way I feel it. And it feels that way. And I think that makes us unique because we show up in spaces and often in a way that I don't think they do.
I want to say that what makes Plymouth unique is that you are an amazing, thoughtful, thinking congregation. And the way this shows up for me in a lot of ways, but I'm very mindful of the way it shows up in worship. Particularly at 11 o'clock, we craft our pastoral prayers. I have never, ever received comments on my prayers before, but you are listening to those prayers. You're listening and you're responding, and you engage with me about what I've lifted up. And that is the same for the pulpit. Tomorrow is the 29th anniversary of my ordination. So I've been doing this a long time. I plan on having a party next year for 30. Okay, can we plan a party? And I have served a lot of churches, and I am so blessed to have the freedom to speak from my heart here at Plymouth in a way I have not been able to in other churches, because there was too much at stake, too many people, personalities that could be affected. And I'm not saying everybody agrees with everything I say. I know that's not true. And when it happens, then we engage in really good conversations about what's been said. But I will tell you that for me, having the true freedom of the pulpit is the biggest blessing.
I'll be very quick because we are out of time. Or do we have time for one more question? Or are we out of time? One more. So I would say children and youth. That is a place that we are incredibly unique and talented and growing. Art as a spiritual practice is a piece. And I would agree with what they both said. It's a place where questions are embraced. We don't need to have answers for everything. One more.
I have a question. What is our current relationship with the food shelf, and who is overseeing that?
There's a two-part answer to that, and I'll answer part of it. The food shelf is not part of our church. They are a tenant. They rent space. So in that way, as a facilities way, DeWayne would be in relation. DeWayne and Ann, our director of operations, would be in relationship with them. As a ministry that we believe in, that we support, it would be the board of outreach primarily.
And as a facilities, again, one of the things that we are challenged in is, again, because of our ministries and because of our openness, we have so many people who want to be in relationship with us. And apropos of that campus task force report, we have to really think about making, we're inside of a building that was not created and designed for those kinds of relationships. So specifically talking about the food shelf, one of our biggest challenges is the physical space. How much space? When do we need to do real capital improvements? We have a city regulatory regime that comes in and cites us for different things. And all of that has implications both for how much it costs, but also in terms of planning. And so the challenge with the food shelf is, especially since COVID, it has grown, also a testament to the need. And so one of our biggest challenge is space, and not just space as a general proposition. We're talking about space. Implicated in that is configuration of the space, the ability and finances and resources to change that, and how do we honor our commitments to the other tenants that we have. So that you ask a question that gets right to a very challenging way of trying to thread a needle, and we're right in the middle of it. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was a wonderful conversation. Please join us again next week. We have Sherry Gaugler-Stewart from the retreat in Wayzata, and she will speak about how the disease of addiction affects the family of the addict. And she comes highly recommended, and it will be another interesting forum. So please join us, and thank you for being here today.